Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's EMIS and Mazars webinar on healthcare and pharmaceutical sector in emerging Europe, potential trends and mergers and acquisitions. It's great to have you on this webinar. Let's wait for a minute until everybody can join. Okay, thank you. Good morning once again. Welcome on the webinar on healthcare and pharmaceutical sector. During today's webinar, our team of experts at EMIS and Mazars will delve into and present a current overview of healthcare and pharmaceutical sector, its opportunities, and in particular mergers and acquisitions activities and trends that are shaping this sector. The webinar is following the EMIS report that is entitled EMIS Insights Emerging Europe Pharma and Healthcare Sector report. And this report was released in August and is a pretext for our today's meeting. This is the first webinar in a planned series of webinars. We plan to all together with Mazars to do similar events on other sectors. It will depend on our both publishing schedule, but also in the interests of attendees of our clients. And from this place, we already invite you for those meetings. We will send you invitations and information about future events in the future after that meeting. You can find a full version of a report that I'm referring to in a section of GoToWebinar platform. It is called Webinar Handouts. You can find this report there and download the full version. This is bigger version than something that was published that was available for you before the event. Now you have the access to the full version of the report, and please feel free to download this report. If you have any questions regarding our presentations, please feel free to ask them in a chat in the GoToWebinar platform. We will answer all of them after our presentation. After that, we plan the Q&A session, and feel free to ask any question you like. The webinar recording will be available after the meeting, and we will send it to you just after about a few days after the meeting. You just have to download and download the file and send it to all the participants. The presentations will be also sent all together with this recording. We will start our presentation with a presentation of EMIS Insights Emerging Europe Pharma and Healthcare Sector report. This is a report that I have already mentioned, and this will be presented by me. My name is Andrzej Żurawski. I'm an economist at EMIS and CAC. This is companies from ISI Emerging Markets Group, and I will just do a brief summary of the main findings of the report that I've already mentioned. After that, I invite you to listen to the presentations of Mr. Łukasz Hruboń and Bartosz Łukasz from Mazars. This is our partner company, and they will tell us how to acquire a company in the healthcare and pharmaceutical sector, and they will tell us more about typical M&A process and currents in Central and Eastern Europe regarding this particular healthcare and pharmaceutical sector. As you can see, Łukasz Hruboń is a head of transaction services of Mazars in Czech Republic, and Bartosz Łukasz is head of mergers and acquisitions Mazars in Poland. So as you can see, those are the most qualified experts we can find in this regard. And after those presentations, as I mentioned, we invite you to Q&A session. Okay, let me start with a presentation on EMIS Insights report. I will start that for a context, the report was prepared by EMIS. EMIS is a company that is part of larger ISI Emerging Markets Group. ISI Emerging Markets Group is a company that consists of 3 smaller companies, and all of them have one goal. The goal is to provide for customers knowledge and information about markets about emerging markets around the world. The company focuses on 3 regions that are the most important for the global economy among the emerging markets: South and East Asia, Latin America, and Central and Eastern Europe. And Central and Eastern Europe is the main reason we are here. The companies I mentioned are CIC. From the bottom of this slide, there's CIC, that is the company that is providing information on macroeconomic data. This is, we offer the various time series regarding emerging markets. Red company is it was acquired by ISI last year and is the world leading market intelligence company. And finally, the company that is organizing this event and has published the report I'm referring to is EMIS. EMIS is a company that offers for our clients information about companies, markets, and in particular, various sectoral information. If we talk about sectoral information, EMIS our EMIS platform offers for our clients a variety of reports and analysis on emerging markets. On our platform, you can find the reports from various companies, various providers, the leading providers on sectoral information about plenty of markets and plenty of countries. But apart from that, we also we publish our own EMIS industry research reports. And those reports, one of those reports is the topic of our today's webinar. As I've mentioned, one of the three regions that is the main focus of ISI is Central and Eastern Europe. And in particular, as you can see on the screen, those are three last editions of reports that refer to this region. First of all, we have the reports on some sectors in particular countries. The example here is Poland electric power sector. Sometimes we publish reports on broader regions, and here is an example of Central and Eastern Europe renewable energy sector. And sometimes we also publish a thematic reports that refers to some narrower but very important for economy topics. And this example is electric vehicles around the world, and the Central and Eastern Europe plays quite an important role in this sector because Poland, as you may know, is one of the world's largest producers of batteries for electric vehicles, and that's why this report is mentioned in this place. As I've mentioned before, we plan to have more webinars together with Mazars, and according to initial plan, this is most likely that the next sector that will be covered will be renewable energy, as is shown in this slide. But if you have any suggestions that some sectors are in particular interests of our clients, we invite you to send us in information. Okay, going to the main topic, so pharma and healthcare sector. As I've mentioned, the report Emerging Europe Pharma and Healthcare Sector was published on August this year. And this report, as most of our Central and Eastern Europe reports, focus on 6 countries. Those countries are Poland, Romania, Turkey, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Russia. This choice of these countries is quite clear because those are the largest countries in the region, both in terms of population and GDP, but also they all play pivotal role in the pharma and healthcare sector in this region. The largest companies from Central and Eastern Europe are mostly located in those 6 countries. So this is no accident that these countries were chosen as to draw a picture of the whole region. The report shows a structure of a market in the region, main events during last 2 or 3 years, main market players, mergers and acquisitions activity, and this is in a nutshell everything you need to know about how the pharma and healthcare sector develops in emerging Europe. And in particular, we also this is very important for all the EMIS Insights industry reports to draw outlooks and opportunities for the sector. We try to tell something about trends and what to predict in the future. However, in the case of this particular report, there are 2 things that I must mention. Just why we have to be careful with the conclusions, and why the analytical work in this particular report was harder than ever. First of all, as everybody knows, since 2020 there was a global pandemic of COVID-19, and pandemic obviously influenced all the sectors of economy and the economy as a whole. But the pharma and healthcare sector was the most affected by this pandemics, and pandemic made some changes for the sector itself, and it was inevitable in case of such a huge event. For analytical purposes, so from my point of view as an analyst, there are two things that are important that go from pandemic. First of all, we still lack of some data on pharma and healthcare sector. I mean data in particular the internationally comparable data. So whenever we compare countries, it is very difficult after pandemic to compare Central and Eastern Europe with other economies. Mostly because some major institutions such as World Bank or IMF still did not publish those internationally comparable data. So sometimes we use data before pandemic, sometimes we just use the most recent data, but we make an asterisk that you should be careful that this data may change. Second of all, we know that pandemic has changed the structure of the pharma and healthcare sector in Central and Eastern Europe, but we still don't know if this was a temporary change or this was permanent one. We don't know if the changes that were made in the structure of sector, mergers and acquisitions, activity, and so on, if they were temporal or not. And the second important caveat, if you look at the list of countries, you may notice that one of the countries mentioned is Russia. And as we all know, also since 2022, Russia is waging a war against Ukraine. And since that date, their data on Russia is not always reliable and available. So there is also some for Russia, we also sometimes use data, older data than we usually use in EMIS industry reports, because the main idea for EMIS industry insights industry reports is to always use the latest data available. Okay, I would like to draw a background for our presentation. I would like to compare emerging Europe pharma and healthcare sector to OECD and European Union countries. And what we have on the slide is that's 2020 is the reason why we use this year is already mentioned. There is no reliable data, newer data available, but this we know from other sources that this situation, the proportion here didn't change since 2020. And as we can see, all the countries from emerging Europe spent significantly less on healthcare than European Union, average for European Union, and it is case not only for also for countries that both countries who joined the European Union to countries who did not. In particular, these health expenditures are lower both in terms of absolute values and in terms of percentage of gross domestic product. The same we can tell about total market value of pharmaceutical sector. This region is not as good developed as Western Europe, and that shows us that there is still a great potential for the sector to expand and to grow. Okay, I have mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic multiple times, and there is one important thing that I would like to tell about emerging Europe region. If you go to our report that I mentioned that you can download from the GoToWebinar platform, you will find a chart that is showing that the number of cases in those countries from emerging Europe was significantly lower than in European Union average. Why I mention it? Because the slide that you are seeing in the bottom of the chart you are seeing on the bottom of the slide shows the excess mortality. Excess mortality this is by 2022. So this is for all the pandemic periods, so 2020, 21, 22. This chart shows how many more deaths there were in the country, comparing to the period between 2017 and 2019, so before the pandemics. And as you can see, in most of the countries of the Europe, with exception for Scandinavian countries, so Sweden, Finland, and Norway, in all other regions of Europe, there was significantly more deaths during pandemic. However, for the case of Central and Eastern Europe, this proportion is almost twice as high as in the Western Europe. The worst situation here is, as you can see, is for Russia, but all the countries we are covering here had worse situation than Western Europe. What are the reasons for that? One reason was on the former slide. So if the expenditures for pharma and healthcare sector are lower than in Western Europe, we can expect that the quality of healthcare is not as good as it could be. And the second reason is shown in the chart above. You can see here vaccinations per 100 people. And as you can see, all the countries are below the European Union average. Okay, if I can now go to the structure of the market. This is a part of our EMIS company database. And as you can see, if we filter there for companies from those 6 countries, so Poland, Russia, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, and Turkey, and filter for the pharmaceutical and healthcare sector, we can find there that there are 33,700 companies. So this is a very large market in terms of number of companies, and this shows us that the market is very much fragmented. Here you can see the 3 largest companies in the sector in terms of total operating revenues, and those companies are Neuka, Russia Farm, and Gedeon Richter. Coincidentally, all 3 are from different countries, so we cannot say that this pharmaceutical market is focused on one country or one country is dominating all the region. The other thing you can mention here is that the total, comparing to the size of the market, total operating revenues of the top 3 players are not as big as it happens in other sectors. It means that their share in the market is not very significant, not very big, and it means that the pharmaceutical market is very competitive, and there are lots of companies that compete in this competition market. Second thing you can second conclusion you can draw from our company database is that there is very significant share of companies with foreign capital in this sector. And in particular, it is important for companies that are producers of pharmaceutical products, but also the distribution chains also very often have a significant share of foreign capital. This is a very important factor of this sector. Going to mergers and acquisitions activity, this is also taken from our EMIS database. We call it Deal Watch. It's a part of EMIS website, and then you can find the evidence on all the transactions that were done in the sector. This slide shows a situation since January 2021, and as you can see, in those 6 countries, there were 112 deals done during just 2.5 years. This is quite a significant number, and there are not many sectors that had that many deals done in this period. If we compare for any other economic sector, this is very important to mention. Second very important thing you can see in the slide is that the country that had made the most of transactions is Romania. So this is I think this is counterintuitive, because Romania is not the largest country in this poll, but still almost the quarter, almost the third of the all transactions made in pharma and healthcare sectors were done in Romania. I will not tell you more about the biggest deals because this is a most important part of the next presentation. So now I will move on to the main conclusions from our EMIS Insights report. And first of all, I'm going to repeat that health expenditures are significantly below the levels of European Union or OECD countries, and that means that there is still a potential to grow of the sector. Secondly, the sector is highly competitive. Even the biggest players, the biggest companies have relatively low share in the market. And that means that there is an opportunity both for new players to come, but also for mergers and acquisitions activity. The high share of foreign capital is something I've already mentioned. This is also something that is shaping the sector very significantly. And relatively high mergers and acquisitions activity comparing to the other sectors is another proof that the market is highly competitive. And finally, the sector shows in Central and Eastern Europe shows a great potential of growth, and the potential for the companies as Mazars who are consulting in such transactions is very, very big here. If you have any questions, of course, I invite you to the Q&A sessions afterwards, but if you have any questions about EMIS platform or anything else, I invite you to ask questions to Ursula Zajdel, who is our Senior Business Development Manager for Central and Eastern Europe, and here you have contact to her. Thank you. And now I give floor to Lucas.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Andrzej, thank you for the insights provided. Okay, so from the Mazars side, today we will be speaking briefly about M&A trends in the market. We will cover briefly how the M&A process is organized, and then we will devote some 10 minutes to a short case study covering how financial DD on a clinic is done. This could be a bit more hands-on part of that. Who we are, I'm Lukáš Hruboň. I'm in charge of the transaction advisory team in Prague, and in the recent years we've done numerous DDs in various medical providers, so hence my presence here. Bartosz, if you can give us a bit of introduction of yourself, please.
Good morning, my name is Bartosz Buczak. I'm leading the M&A practice of Mazars in Poland. I have approximately 20 years of corporate finance transaction advisory experience, and I've been looking at this sector for many years now, with many transactions completed and many in progress.
Thank you. Briefly about our company. Mazars is an international firm covering audit, tax, accounting, outsourcing, and consulting services. It's present in almost 100 countries, 47,000 professionals. And it should be said that we cooperate quite closely within the CE region, covering all the countries. So if you have some cross-border CE project, we could be a good fit for you. What we offer in the M&A and related space, it's financial and tax due diligence, it's valuation services, including expert valuations, then corporate finance services, meaning organizing either a buy-side or sell-side process, then carve-out and divestments, and the Polish team is also capable to assist you with post-merger integration. And in the cross-border cooperations, we can assist you also with financing and crisis and dispute solutions. And last but not least, regularly we publish M&A related research papers, which can be found either on our web pages or LinkedIn. So you might wish to check it in there. And then I will pass the word to Bartek on the M&A market.
Thank you. We will start this section with presenting some transaction data, and this data is sourced from merger market. When you look at this slide, at the top of it, you can see the evolution in the number of deals in healthcare and pharmaceuticals in Central and Eastern Europe by sector, by subsector. Thank you. And you can see that there is a growing trend in the number of transactions, and this trend has particularly accelerated in 2022 because in Poland, which is the largest market of the region, there is ongoing consolidation of dentistry and veterinary services companies, and this trend encompasses many smaller deals. When you look at the bottom side of the page, you can see that transaction multiples are available just for a small portion of the deals, and it's around 60 out of the 741 you can see on the right hand of the page. And here the most remarkable trend is the growth in biotechnology multiples. In the first analyzed period, 2010, they amounted to around 13 times as far as EV/EBITDA is concerned, and in the next period from 2011 to 2023, this increased above 20 times. On this next slide, you can see the biggest deals from last 5 years for which financial data was disclosed. And clearly the biggest one of them was the Zentiva deal. Zentiva, Czechia's generic producer, was sold by Sanofi to Antwerp International. It will be now around 5 years from this transaction happening. And one can also see that Poland, as I said, the biggest market in the region, has relatively high share of transactions. And Poland also includes the fairly recent third largest transaction, which happened just a few months ago in August 2023. This is a sale of a cardiology group to a new entrant. So new entries are also possible in this market, which is Italian medical services group, Gruppo San Donato. Mazars is also present in this market. As Lucas said, in Poland, we closed a transaction which was related to a medical group operating in one of top 5 Polish cities. And this group, MedPolonia, was sold with our assistance to LuxMed, the biggest Polish independent healthcare services provider, which is in turn owned by leading UK player Bupa. If we were to summarize the key contributions to this significant M&A activity, we would attribute it to the following 6 key trends. They are aging population and growth in chronic diseases, COVID pandemic, wealthier societies on the one hand, and subsidies received by the sector on the other hand, growth in the biotech startup market, and last but not least, the increasing knowledge about the public about their medical condition and wellness. And now let's move to the process. So if we can start with the first substantive slide. Actually, if one is an owner of a medical or pharma business, before entering into a transaction, one should ask themselves 2 key questions. The first one is why to sell the business, and here there are multiple possible answers, but for instance, the reason might be that somebody needs a partner with whom they can grow faster than on their own. And the second question is what deal parameters about the structure and about the process are to be considered. And here a possible question is whether one should talk just to one possible partner, or whether one should run a process with many investors which can in theory maximize the price. That's typically the task of an M&A advisor, to sort out those questions with the owner. And if you can see on the next slide, this is actually the first stage of the process, the identification of the strategy and selling parameters. And then the second stage follows, in which one identifies potential investors, and one tries to solicit from them initial offers, which are provided on the basis of relatively limited information. Then in stage 3, the providers of the most attractive initial offers are given access to additional information in order to perform due diligence. This is done in order to either uphold their initial offers or to revise them. And then negotiations of the transaction agreement begin in this phase as well. Once the transaction agreement has been concluded and executed, the successful investor can start the post-merger integration. And if we look on the next slide, we'll see that post-merger integration is about risks that can undermine the success of each transaction. So this post-merger integration exercise is aimed at eliminating those risks, such as difficulties in achieving assumed synergies or difficulties in cooperation between the investors team and the people team of the target. If we can move to page 18. So as I said, post-merger integration is about risks. And there is another stage of the process which I mentioned before, which is also about risks. This is about identifying and mitigating various risks, such as, for instance, tax risks or legal risks or environmental risks during the due diligence phase. But due diligence is also about understanding the true value of the business to be acquired. And I will give the floor to Lucas to show an example how to do in practice.
Okay, thank you, Bartek. So this will be a short case study how the financial due diligence on the profit and loss account is done. Yeah, but let's start with the valuation primer. What we see in the market is that everyone is obsessed with EV/EBITDA multiples, which has its pros, its cons. But the fact is that very often this multiple is fixed during the indicative offer stage, and the parties don't wish to touch it again after the due diligence. So the focus is very often on the variable of EBITDA adjusted. And yes, EBITDA adjusted can be expressed as EBITDA margin on revenues. So this is a case study that is highly hypothetical with dummy figures, but it's based kind of on true stories and findings we have encountered. So what's the issue here? The target is rather a small clinic with 4 million euros turnover, and the EV/EBITDA multiple was fixed before the DD at the level of 8. And what is a bit peculiar about the target company is that its industry peers have EBITDA margins of around 20%, while our target has an outstanding EBITDA margin of 40%. So how this can be? Is it a true margin or something peculiar is going on? And we have some procedures to look at it during the financial DD projects. So here I will be briefly presenting what we look at, just a brief summary, and then we'll comment on this hypothetical case if there was some finding or not. So first, for a clinic, the medical facility will look at the client's base, whether these are domestic or cross-border patients, if these are self-payers or those covered by public or private health insurance schemes, e.g. why was it important, during the COVID times, the cross-border traveling was highly limited. So if you had an IVF clinic with most of the patients sourced from, e.g., Israel or such countries, yeah, that was a bit of trouble for them to sustain the COVID times. But in this case, on the target, there was no finding in our short example. What we need to look at the healthcare industry, at the medical providers, are always also physical KPIs, such as number of procedures or whatever metrics it is, because first it should be correlated with the revenue, which we test to an extent. And also we've seen one case, it was a home care facility. And when we calculated number of employees and number of cars they have to serve the patients, it was impossible that they do so many kilometers and so many performances that were reporting to the authorities. So this was kind of a deal breaker, that the reporting to the authorities was inflated. But here, no such a problem. Very good. Then as part of the domestic patients usually are covered by health insurance schemes, either public or private. We need to test whether the revenue in accounting is akin to what the health insurance bodies are able to approve. And if there are no claims with the authorities or disputes with them, and also by the legislation that tends to be quite complicated in some cases, there could be imposed some care limits for the period. So the growth year on year cannot be unlimited in the business plans. And e.g. in the Czech Republic, in some specializations, it's covered by annual reconciliation letters issued by the authorities. So we test whether the revenue recognized is equal to what was approved by the authorities. Here in the case of this clinic, unfortunately, we have found that some part of the revenues was not approved by the authorities, and so the variable margin cannot be approved for the period in the EBITDA measure. So this will be one of the adjustments to the EBITDA. If we go to other areas that we usually cover, HR, indeed, this is important everywhere, but in the medical industry, it's one of the most important things besides relationship with authorities. And so what we need to look more in detail is obviously who are key persons, what is their role, and what is their true time dedication. And this also applies to the owners, that we need to quite understand who is important, what they do. We also need to look at age characteristics and vacancies in this respect, because e.g. in the Czech Republic, there is generally scarcity of the medical personnel, but we know that some key doctors are at the age to be retired. And so this could be a big challenge for the prospect purchaser. We also look at unused holidays and overtimes, because it could be that the company is running over its normal capacity, in fact. And what we also test is what is the magnitude of so-called deemed employment schemes, meaning that some, e.g. important doctor is invoicing to the company as a freelancer while he's working then their 100% of his time dedication, which could be questioned from the tax point of view. And it means that the taxation is a bit skewed. I mean, if it's a guy in anesthesiology, it doesn't matter so much, but if it's a full-time doctor, then it's a bit peculiar. And this drives us namely to conclusions if there are some costs missing within the company, or if there are some disruptions in the HR base. So in the case of this target company, as we know, it's a small target that is owned by private individuals who are also involved in operations. And in this case, hypothetical one, we discovered that the owner, who is also quite involved in the operations, takes only dividends out of the company, which means that some operating costs obviously are missing, because after the transaction that he will be receiving no dividends, so he needs to be motivated somehow. So some operating costs are missing. And also we have discovered an indication that all the key personnel members have 1 month of unused holidays at the end of the year, which is kind of indication that the company might be running above the capacity. So we need to highlight this as a consideration point in our financial DD report. What we look next is related parties trading. If this is owned by the individuals and there is no pricing rules, you can come across different supplies at different pricing. So this needs to be sorted out as well. Usually real estate is rented, or some medical supplies are provided by related parties. And also, if this is a privately owned small company, usually some part of costs attributes to the personal consumption of the owner. So we need to clean this out. In the case of this clinic, there was no personal consumption, which is rare and it's easier. But we have discovered that the owner is also renting to the clinic the facilities they are operating in, and then this is below the market. And as there is an intention of a prospect purchaser to move to new premises under market rates, we need to do this modeling adjustment that some costs are missing. And the last part we will touch is on suppliers. It's about concentrations, if these are replaceable, unreplaceable, what is the relationship, what are the changes in prices, if this can be passed through to the revenue, obviously. And also, as these are usually wholesalers, what is important from the accounting point of view, if there are some annual volume bonuses charged ex post, they need to be accrued to the right period, which sometimes doesn't happen. So, but in case of our clinic, it's not been the case. So this has been kind of a checklist and what we have found. And usually, so simplified, the EBITDA adjusted schedule after all looks like that we have started with the EBITDA reported margin of 40%, and then we adjust for unjustified margin with health insurance bodies, missing costs of the owners, prospect rental will be higher than that charge in the past. And we have first sort of adjustments. And then there is a question mark or the consideration point, what it means that all the key staff has been working more than is normal. In the healthcare industry in the Czech Republic, it's unfortunately normal, but it could also mean that they had a peaking year that will not be repeated. So this is only a consideration point. So we see that after those analytical procedures, we've been able to adjust also the EBITDA margin a bit more closer to the peer group. Okay, we know that the EV/EBITDA multiple has been fixed at 8 and that the adjusted EBITDA is now lower. Does it mean that the enterprise value and also the deal price will drop by this amount proportionally? Yeah, the answer is depends on the negotiations and of explaining those adjustments to the seller. So quite depends on the competitive position and how the situation is structured. But we need to highlight it in our buy side memos that there could be some valuation corrections. Okay, so that's been it. Happy to answer any questions, and Bartek will conclude.
Yeah, so I would like to conclude with some M&A outlook for the sector. Firstly, COVID, that was mentioned numerous times during our presentation, resulted in above average demand for healthcare and increased public awareness of health, of wellness. healthcare companies therefore need to make new investments, need to invest in technology to meet people expectations and satisfy them. Secondly, the population continues to age, and also the need for healthcare and pharmaceuticals consequently is growing. So this growth is also likely to fuel M&A activities. And there is no doubt that there will be technology developments, both in medical technology and in biotechnology startups. And this will be, in our opinion, also an important driver of the M&A activity in the sector over the next few years. And this brings us really to the end of the presentation. On behalf of my colleagues and myself, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I think this will be the time for the questions.
Thank you very much, Bartosz and Łukasz, for your great presentation. We can now move on to Q&A session. You still have an opportunity to ask a question on chat. If we don't have time or place to answer them here, we will send you an answer together with recording of a webinar. The first question is about, together to my presentation, this is a question from Mark, and this is question, what makes Romania so specific, that it had the biggest number of transactions? The answer here is on the specifics of the structure of this market, because comparing to other countries in the region, Romania is not as mature country as others in the region. Therefore, there are more smaller companies, and all the markets in the sector tends to show the tendency to consolidation. And this is in particular important if you compare this slide with the number of transactions with the slide that was later shown with the biggest transactions and most important that Łukasz or Bartosz was showing you. And there was no Romanian companies there, and this is no accident, because the companies there are smaller, but the number of transactions is bigger, but the size of the transaction is also smaller. And this is the main reason. Okay, Bartosz, I think you have a question.
Yes, I have noticed a question from Joanna about how to maximize the transaction price from the seller's point of view. And in this respect, there are factors that are within one's control and beyond one's control. So obviously, it's easy to maximize the price if the asset that you are selling is very attractive. If we were to talk about the factors beyond one's control, and the asset is always as it is. But from our experience, something which can be to some extent influenced is this competitive pressure, competitive tension within the process. So the possibility to attract to the transaction process a greater number of investors. And this helps both to streamline the process, because it's easier than to keep it to a certain timetable, but more importantly, the pressure, the tension between the offerors also helps them to get the best prices possible for the seller.
Thank you. Łukasz, I think you have also one question.
Okay, can you please read it for me?
What are the current trends, challenges you see on the mergers and acquisitions deal making in healthcare and pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I mean, we know that the current M&A market is a bit slower than it used to be the last year and the year before. At least this is what some statistics for the first half show. And so I would speak a bit about general challenges in the market. Obviously, it's a higher level of uncertainties, it's higher borrowing rates, and we are quite close to the Ukrainian crisis, so this hinders the region a bit. On the other hand, we see that the healthcare industry is a bit more resilient, so the drop of the transactions there has not been so big, I would say, but quite it depends sector by sector If it's a medical facility, that there is always a demand. If it's a medical producer that is unique, there is always a demand. In the biotechnologies, yeah, I think this might have been influenced by lower valuations recently, vis-a-vis this uncertainty developments and higher interest rates. So yes, I mean, there's generally a drop in the market, at least as we perceive it here, but the healthcare sector is a bit more resilient in this respect.
As this can be also said in Poland, the general market activity is a little bit slower, but the healthcare sector remains strong.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers and for all your presentations. I think that for now, we don't have any more questions. If you still have any more questions, if for some reason you couldn't have asked during this Q&A session, we invite you to contact us. There are contact details will be sent afterwards, and they are also put in our presentations. So thank you very much for your attendance. As I've mentioned, the recording of the webinar will be sent to you in a few working days. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. This was a pleasure. Bye-bye.